Kids are so cute.
You're very cute.
Doing their things.
Now you're good? Okay. For the record, if it's not taping, it's Rob's fault. I'm just kidding.
Oh, God.
No, I believe you. All right, Dave, go check. Dave, go check.
No, I'm
Just because Jen, if you want. But if we, multiple people check, then it's better.
The clock is running,
Yep.
and there's a sound bar moving. So.
Okay. I believe in you. I will co-sign it.
Okay.
Okay, so it is 5:36 on December 20th, and so I'll call the North Kingstown DEI Subcommittee of the North Kingstown School Committee meeting to order. This is a working meeting for the DEI Subcommittee. The chair, Jennifer Lima, is unfortunately absent, and so myself, Erin Earl, the other school committee member, will convene the meeting. And so the first item on the agenda is the meeting roll call. So if everybody just wants to go around, we'll start with Rob.
Sure. Rob Mezzanotte, Assistant Superintendent.
Shivali Finkelstein, principal at the high school.
Angela Boyce-Claire, teacher.
Thank you, Erin Earl.
Chloe Dyhouse, student.
Melissa Campbell-Kelsey, parent, community.
Dave Alvin, teacher.
Okay, thank you so much. And we have established quorum, so we will move on to the next item, which is the approval of the November 15th meeting minutes. So if people haven't gotten a chance to look at those yet, look quickly, please. They were sent with the, no, that's not true. They were linked in the email that Jen sent, I believe. Okay, and whenever people are ready, if someone wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
I abstained because
So-
I wasn't here. or
So
was-
technically, Robert's Rules land, you don't have to be at the meeting to approve minutes, like,
Okay.
but, so it's up to you, you can abstain though, but it's technically not a thing. Which is interesting.
Okay, I will approve. I did watch most
Yeah.
of it. So.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because all you're saying is like, it's accurate, not
Yeah.
necessarily, like, that, so it's interesting, yeah. Great, okay, so those are approved, thank you so much, and we learned something about Robert's Rules today. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the update on the subcommittee membership and the process for new applicants, timeline, and status of current members. And so I will be happy to provide that update, and then Rob, if you want to
Sure.
jump in there with me as well. And so the school committee, 2 meetings ago, definitely not the last meeting, I believe the meeting prior to that, had worked through the policy that is going to better define our subcommittees and the membership and the process for getting on them, leaving them, etc. And so a revised policy was put in front of the school committee and it was adopted with the recommendation that it actually go back down to the policy subcommittee level for further refinement as far as like getting some feedback once the process starts from different subcommittees, etc. So we know it's not a locked document, but we do have an updated version of the policy that oversees this area. And at that point, the assistant superintendent had offered to put together the rubric and the application, which was supposed to be approved by the school committee at the last meeting, but we had a time constraint because of the town council meeting right after it, and so we did not get to that agenda item. So folks were instructed to send Mr. Mezzanotte feedback on those documents so that we could approve it at our next meeting. So as far as timeline, it sounds like the application and the rubric for assessing members, et cetera, will be up and ready to go for the new year, and we'll be able to start that process for this committee and then any others that need to have rollover or vacancies, et cetera. Rob, anything you want to add to that?
I think you just captured it. Yeah, so basically, once it goes in front of the committee and meets with their approval, we'll be able to put that process out there and move forward from there with our applications and membership and so on and so forth. So yeah, Erin just captured it, I think, pretty well. So once the approval's done, we'll move forward.
One important piece that I did forget that I just remembered was that the documents that you all had worked on as far as your recommendations that went up were shared with Rob so that he didn't start from scratch. So again, thank you all to the hard work and conversations that you had regarding that piece before it went up to the subcommittee that was used in informing the process. So we greatly appreciate it.
Yep.
Any questions or comments regarding that? Okay, We made some progress, that was cool.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, I think for the subcommittees, you know, as we roll a new process out, I'm big on, not, getting feedback as it happens too. So we kind of say, hey, this is what we think is best, and then we go from there, and then we tweak things. And so I think that'll be really helpful this year too, to kind of see how it rolls out. The next one on the agenda is discuss feedback received for the DEI committee regarding inclusive language. And so I believe an email from a community member was shared with you all regarding the usage of parents and guardians versus utilizing the slash in between the two. And I believe Ms. Lima wanted us to, I'm just making sure that this is this one, receive feedback. Yeah, that's definitely this. Yeah, so I think she wanted to get some feedback on the community members' comments regarding that. So there's an email in your attachments for that. And so we're not looking for any action on this, but we did, I think, want the DEI committee's kind of thoughts on the correspondence.
What we got?
I have it up, I read it earlier, but I have it up right now. And I think that the community member who sent this email makes a great point, but I don't know that it's relevant in the context of which we're using parents and guardians, because I think that usually when we're saying guardian/parents, it's for a form that needs to be signed or something. And in that case, it's really the person who has the legal guardianship of the child who should be signing it. And so I don't know that parents and guardians, does that make any sense what I'm trying to say? I just think that it in terms of actually the person who needs to be signing the form that's sent home and whatnot, which is often the context in which this is used. And so I just think that it's not the person talks about the erasure of the words parents, moms, and dads down the road. I think that's very valid point, but I just don't know that it's relevant within the specific usage of the words that we're right? No? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's valid.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I know that there was some discussion on this last month, and I watched a bit of that from the recording, that I read guardians from the legal standpoint, exactly what you just said. So in my head, there is no, in the sentence that says indicates these two words are interchangeable, they're legally not interchangeable. That's why we have the word guardian. And then from my perspective as a parent, I do not feel erased. I can understand and of course honor that some folks might feel that way. But I think for me, I went the use of the word guardian in the legal sense, just like you, and that I don't know if I have a strong feeling either way of and versus the slash. I think it's important that both words are there. I don't feel that either of those, I don't feel that we're erasing the words mother, father, parent. I mean, I know who I am.
I agree.
Other thoughts? I have, I guess, two different train of thoughts on this one. One is the grammar part, so I looked up what does a backslash mean? Because I was curious, because I know how I use it, but I was curious how the dictionary used it, or what the official thing was. So I'll share that in a second. Get excited. But then I know you are. I know. Okay, we won't bury the lead. It means or.
Okay.
Backslash means or. Right. So it also means division in fractions when used in that context. But when it's used in the way that we're using it, it means or, and then the other use is obviously the date separator. So in the context of what we're using it, when we say guardian/parents or parents/guardians, it just means parent or guardian, which is, I think, how we were intending to use it. The and actually doesn't grammatically work for me because you would not have both a parent and a guardian.
That's what I was trying to say.
You have either or, not both. In that theory,
I hear that, but I also think the word and is always more inclusive than the word or in many contexts, and so this is like a call out for any forms or whatever, or emails that are sent out. Parents and guardians, you're all in this here's the message for you.
Yep.
Erin, I think what you said just might be a little off, because you could have a parent that's not your guardian. You could have a
Yes.
So you could have a guardian on the
Yep.
side.
Oh, so maybe and
But
is
if-
the better word.
I don't know.
But I guess the question is if within the context of a letter being sent home to be signed, a parent who is not the guardian of a child could not sign that letter.
Yeah,
And
so-
so like, that's what I was trying to say. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, like, I think that parents and guardians and parent/guardian is basically the same thing. But if we're sending a letter home to be signed, I think it's important to be precise that the person who's signing it is the person who has responsibility for the child, like legally.
Perfect.
No? Is that? Yeah, sorry.
What about and or? Could we do an and or?
I think slash is fine.
Yeah.
I do.
so too.
So too.
I think it gets the message
Yeah.
across. It's inclusive of everybody. There are different family structures, there are different, there are different circumstances that kids have at home. I think that parents, guardians is to me inclusive.
Yeah. Did anyone understand? I wasn't quite clear on how using parents and guardians erases parentdom.
I just disagree with that,
Yeah.
personally, just speaking for myself.
Yeah.
I think that's an assumption, and it's not really based in
Like, I guess they were saying instead of mom and dad, that's how I was kind of reading it, but,
I read it as that it was kind of a slippery slope argument that this is possibly a precursor to eventually erasing the parents from the
Oh,
messaging.
okay.
And I just don't see any evidence to support that
Yeah.
at all. I know personally, I would never stand behind something
Yeah.
that would remove a parent from that, as long
Yeah.
as it's inclusive of all family structures.
yep.
So I think that person has an opinion, and that's fine. But I just don't see how this would be leading to the assumption that she's making.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
I completely agree with you. I don't think that the school department would ever put something out that said, "Dear legal guardian." It's just,
No.
we're people that work with kids and families. That's what we love.
Yep.
Our families and kids, and
Right.
that's what they are first.
Yeah, it's actually interesting too, like this conversation here and this conversation in the educational setting that I work in is different, because most of our students are over 18, and so they have different relationships with adults than K-12. And so I definitely agree that we would continue to use parents, but I do agree at the K-12 level, but I do agree that making sure that we include guardians is really important, because all underage children in theory have one or the other, whether the state's their guardian, whether they are in foster care, whatever it is, like someone at that threshold is legally responsible. And as we were talking about, it's important for forms, but it's also important for like people feeling included when they receive the documents or when they receive the notifications. I know we sometimes use families as well, but like especially for the ones that like are very specific when they're saying, hey, the person that's legally responsible for this, whether it's the parent or a guardian, needs to do something. Like I think that's very important to use both. But I agree with you, Rob, that I don't think that it's a precursor by any means to moving to just legal guardian or something. Like I think it's just trying to make sure that whoever's receiving the thing understands that they are part of the equation and need to do whatever action, or that they're, included in what we consider, like support systems for students.
And I have had students in the past when it was just like parent signature, sometimes some of them would panic because they're like, oh my gosh, my mom and dad are on vacation, my grandmother's watching me, what am I gonna do? I'm like, your grandmother can sign, she's your
Yeah.
guardian right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one? I just wanted to go back to the and. One of the goals of mine, which there's a bunch of them, but one of it is to be really consistent in language across documents and across schools and like different things. And so I am trying to move the school committee, working very closely with the administration, of course, to like having consistency. And so any thoughts more on the and, the slash, the or the and or? And I know it sounds silly, but like I think you all actually brought up some valid grammar points about like how those middle words combine those two other words. And so any thoughts on kind of like what we might want to consider as like the standard, because that's like, because it could go a couple different ways.
I don't mean this to sound cheeky,
Yeah.
but I think parent and or guardian leaves it open to interpretation where the parent could sign even if they're not the guardian. So I would say no to that. And or. The or is going to use more ink over time. So just a slash.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I agree.
Slash.
I think a parent/guardian is, it
I
gets the
don't-
message across,
I
in
think
my
so.
opinion. You
I
know
don't
what
think
mean?
it needs to be changed, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty standard from where I've seen documentation from other places that may not be NK.
Yep.
That's the standard I see.
Yep. Okay. Great. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate community feedback on different things, so I appreciate you all talking through that and being thoughtful about it. Okay, anything else on that item? Okay, there's no action we just need to discuss, so we can move on to the next one. Update and discussion on other recommendations to the school committee. And so, Rob, I might need some help on this one as well. So we obviously had the recommendations that went up to the school committee as far as like the different items that we were working towards. And I'm trying to remember timeline-wise, have we seen you all since we established the temporary committee?
No.
No, right? Okay. Do you want to give that update, or do you want me to?
Sure, you can fill in the blanks in
Sure.
case I kind of, so the three, you all remember, we made 3 recommendations to the school committee. One was the piece about student voice, the second was the piece about the equity vision, and the third was the analysis into student disciplinary data, specifically looking at demographics and subgroup data with regard to discipline. For that third one, the school committee voted to create a kind of a task force group that would specifically be tasked with looking at that question and being kind of like created for the specific purpose of taking on that third recommendation piece, which is the disciplinary data analysis. To my knowledge, Erin, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but to my knowledge, I don't think we've formed that group yet.
No, yeah, so I don't believe so. So I just opened the document so we can do a quick run through on it. So what Rob said is correct. Temporary Advisory Committee on District Discipline. And the reason it's called a Temporary Advisory Committee is that's what's outlined as far as different types of committees we can have. But the goal of that is task focused, to what Rob was saying, where like it's not, you don't just put these up together. It's supposed to be like something where they have a very specific task, they come together, they do specific task, and then when task is accomplished, dissolve. Versus the committee like this that's like kind of ongoing and deals with items as they come up and kind of overall vision and whatnot. And so we made the motion to establish the temporary committee, and the, just looking, this document doesn't seem right. Hold please. So many drafts of documents. So basically, sorry. So the purpose of the Temporary Advisory Committee is going to be to review discipline data, solicit student input about the current disciplinary system, and to review and propose revisions to discipline policies and practices from an equity lens, and advise the school committee on actions that need to improve the disproportionate data that was reported in the equity audit. So that's the purpose of this group. And then we talked, the document that we had presented to the school committee had talked about the data that had come through from the equity audit. And then there were goals. The goals of the Temporary Advisory Committee are, as we mentioned above, to solicit student input about the current disciplinary system, draft and recommend a disciplinary matrix, examine current disciplinary policies and practices through an equity lens and make recommendations for opportunities and improvements, review current restorative data practices being utilized in K-12 education and make recommendations for the district, recommend equity-focused discipline training for district employees, and provide equity-focused professional discipline training for staff in a year. But also, so, and again, the goals, the chairs will obviously work through kind of the order of that and whatnot. The temporary advisory committee is going to be co-chaired by a member of the school committee, and at that meeting we had elected, we had voted on Robert Case to be that member that would oversee that group, and a member of the North Kingstown School District Administration. I believe Dr. Duva would be proposing Rachel Santa, but that hasn't officially gotten proposed via the way that the process works. But he did say it at a meeting, so that's why I'm saying it at a meeting. And then the committee had been recommended to be 2 members from the school committee. I believe Ms. Lima is going to join Rob. We had voted on that one as well. 2 members of the district administration, and then we had put in 3 building level administrators, 1 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high, to make sure we had folks from those different areas. 3 teachers, and an educational support professional, a parent/guardian, and then a community member / content expert on applicable topic, and 4 students. That would be the ideal makeup of this group. And they are set up to be, the recruitment will happen, it'll be advertised for 10 days on the website. The applications will go to Dr. Duva, and then Dr. Duva will come to the school committee no later than the first school committee meeting in January, which is definitely not going to happen, but likely the second one in January. And then we might have actually changed that. I'm reading off the draft. And then that group will start meeting, and they are, I think, go all the way through end of October of next year, and then could be extended if need be. So the great news about that is a recommendation that you all made based on the equity audit got moved up to the school committee level, got voted on by the school committee level, got defined in a way of how we were going to approach it, working with the administration, and then there's a process to put that group in place. So that's cool. Good job, y'all. Any questions, comments, thoughts on that? Okay. And then do we have any other updates on the other 2 recommendations?
I have an update that I have later in this agenda for the equity vision statement.
Awesome. What was the other one? I'm sorry.
The other one was student voice. I can talk about that. So expanding student voice is something that we're looking to do across the board. One of the things I know that Dr. Duver and I have been doing, which has been probably the best part of both of our jobs recently, has been getting out to schools and meeting with different student groups and hearing from them. It's been really enjoyable in so many ways, and very enlightening for us. Our kids have a real good finger on the pulse of what our schools need, even at every level, elementary, middle, high school. They have a really good sense of, it's amazing how we would hear from 5th graders who would be pointing out things that we identified as on our building committee of what our building needs are, without obviously them being involved in any way, shape, or form. But they had their finger on the pulse of those things, and they brought other ideas to our attention. You know what I mean? Things like after school activities that we could be providing, or ways for students to be involved outside of the typical day, and ways that we could get more creative, opportunities in front of kids, which is really awesome. We met with our high school student union group. We met with, I know we have meetings coming up with our middle school groups. We met with our student council group at Stony Lane the other day, which was really fun. So yeah, it's been really good. So that's been one way that we've done it. I think there's a lot of ideas that are out there to incorporate more student voice into decision making. I think that having students around the table when we make decisions, because it ultimately impacts them, is what we need to be doing. We need to be looking at how we're implementing ideas, or how we're proposing ideas and getting student voice. I'm going to speak one of the things I'm going to speak to my experience a little bit on. My experience as a high school teacher and building administrator. I can say that one thing that I worked with my staff previously was the idea of incorporating student voice into the teacher feedback process. Which I think is an enormously powerful practice, and I know teachers who have benefited from that enormously. It would be a feedback process that would exist only between the teacher and the student. It wouldn't exist anything beyond that. but for teachers to get feedback from their students about their experience in the class, academically, just socially, the environment of the class, how they feel about it, to me, that can be some of the best professional learning a teacher can experience. I really believe that. And I think that can happen mostly at the middle and high school level, but who knows, perhaps we could even look at it with the younger grades as well. I think that's a great opportunity for student voice, and I'd love to work on that here, because I've seen that be a really impactful thing for teachers.
Dr. Davis texted me, I'm like, I'm busy right now. Hold on. Okay, let's just make sure. Okay, cool. Okay, so so that is that update. So I guess the question is update and discussion on that item, as far as the recommendations for that, and then we'll move on to the third recommendation in a second. But so any thoughts on that piece as far as teacher voice and different things? I know we had like brainstorm some ideas, but any thoughts on kind of what the administration is kind of working towards, or suggestions or ideas on how to continue to work through making sure that we're bringing student voice into, but also kind of keeping that concept of like through an equity lens, like the whole thing is like that certain populations of students were not feeling heard. I think that's really what came through for me in the equity audit. And so any thoughts or suggestions on that for the administration or the school committee, kind of regarding that topic? Because I think like we have consensus and it's so important, and of course we want to do it, but I also think for me with things like this, we want to have like measurable outcomes and also like success, you know, like in like what is that threshold, right? Like is meeting with every group at the high school, at every school, is that good enough? Or is that, you know, or are we looking for greater, broader, you know, and I think it's such a good start, but you know what I mean? Like I want to be able to at the end of the year be like, hey, these are the things that we did based on this recommendation, and these are the things that we were able to do because we had student voice, et cetera. So any thoughts on any of that?
I think what Rob mentioned about having some sort of like a tool for the teacher-student conversation, feedback tool, I think that's tangible. It's a more tangible thing, which I think we could, you know, we wouldn't look at the results, but, you know, we could survey the teachers to say, like, what's the effectiveness of that? What are some of the good things that have come out of it? You know, what are some of the challenges with it? So I do think that's outside of the meetings, what Rob suggested is probably a potential tangible thing we can look for, which I like.
Yeah, and I would say, Erin, just to your point, like us going out to the schools, it's great, but it's definitely just a start.
Oh, and I knew you were implying that it was. That was with like it was like with like it's awesome, and it wasn't in any way not that.
But I think. I mean, there's a whole lot of ways to incorporate in more student voice. I think one really good practice that we've put this year is just having, I think students are part of our Smart Pass system, right? Like they're part of the groups that like provide feedback, so students have a say in like how this is getting implemented, how it's affecting them, how it's working, so on and so forth. I think that's a good thing. You know what I mean? If students can add their input into how that's getting rolled out, I think that's a good thing. So we can continue that. I guess I'm going to ask the student. Well, I know you. I don't want to put you on the spot, Chloe, to like speak for everybody. But like just in general, is there anything where you or your peers feel like they could wish they had more voice in?
I think that teachers are really willing to listen when students will reach out. But I think that positions like mine on this subcommittee, there's a lot more students than maybe you guys think that want to be in this kind of position. And so I think that like there are a lot of opportunities for student voice, and there's opportunities like this where I am. But like if we I think that there's more students than there are opportunities. Does that make any sense?
Yep.
But I do feel like when you guys came to the REA meeting, I felt like the students really felt heard, myself included, obviously. And so I really think that what you're doing is really,
Thank you.
really great.
That's great. That's great to hear that. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad they felt that way.
Yeah. What did you say?
I will echo what Chloe just said, but I support what you said, Rob, about, and Shivali, the student-teacher kind of feedback, because I think there are a lot of students that don't really affiliate with any group.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of kids that come in at the bell and they leave and they have to go to work or whatever, and they're not involved in sports or after-school clubs or activities, and they perhaps don't feel that they have a voice or that their voice isn't heard. And I think the one-on-one with teachers would give them that opportunity to be heard, and that through the teachers then their voices could be heard.
Right, I agree.
So that's my feedback
A lot
on
of
that.
students want a lot of things to change, but a lot of those same students don't yet know how they can reach out in an effective way. But I think that when you were talking about the student, the first thing, I apologize. The subcommittee or the
Disciplinary subcommittee.
Yes, that. You mentioned that they were going to talk to students and ask for their input on the discipline, and I think that students are going to have a lot of thoughts. I think that like when we ask students, like there's going to be a lot of feedback that we wouldn't have heard otherwise, and so I'm actually really excited about that. When I heard it, I was like, oh, that's going to be really effective.
Or Dave, go ahead.
I think communication is key, and oftentimes people in the middle or on the bottom don't understand what's going on above them. So maybe if there were some place where the kids could look and say, okay, these are concerns that students presented, and someone could put down how they're being addressed, like, oh, at the administrative level, we're having discussions, we're forming a committee to look into this. In the schools, we have more teachers patrolling the hallways to keep things safe or something like that. And even within the classrooms, we're doing this or whatever it might be, just so that the kids know, like, we are listening to them and we are acting on it, and we value what they say. Like, it could be something like vaping in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
We've installed the monitors, we've done cameras in the hallways to monitor who's going in and out, to identify the potential vapors so that we can offer them the help that they might need or want, just to keep all of that safe.
Absolutely. And like, I view these kind of things as like, our goal is to be learning centered, right? That's what we're about, right? That's why they build schools, right? It's about learning, you know? So I get excited about this stuff, because it's like, to me, this is what learning is, you know what I mean? It's not about just like, you know, me or this person or that person, just like telling other people this is how it is. Even though there's some parts of it that are gonna be that, but like, it's more about like, this is us. You know what I mean? This is us, and so there's voices everywhere. There's opportunities for listening. There's opportunities for communication, for feedback, for learning, and that can be hard sometimes. I know, like, in my perspective as a building principal, it was sometimes really hard for me to hear from kids about what they saw of the discipline in the building, because it was personal to me, and it was hard, but it was good. It was learning. It's how you learn, and it's how you ultimately like become better and more connected when you hear those things. It's never good to just be in isolation. So I love that stuff. I think that's really good practice for schools. I think it's healthy.
I like that idea of like showing students like the progress timeline, because I think one thing that I never understood as a student was that things take so long, and that you know, like, you just, and then you think like, oh, I said this thing but nothing happened, and like that means nothing will ever happen. And especially as students move through educational systems, like, there's a potential that the things that they say they will never benefit from, but it doesn't mean that the students behind them won't. And so I love that concept of like figuring out a way in our district to obviously hear, right, but then show like we valued through like establishing the action. You said this, I wrote it all down, it's very good. Like showing the action and then showing the timeline, and it always makes me think of those signs that are all over Rhode Island where it's like, this road project is this much money, but I love those. I'm like, oh, okay, like it's on time, oh, it's late, oh, it's gonna cost us much. Like, I love that transparency. And so I also liked what you said, Dave, about like the visual of that. Like, how do we do that so students actually see it? Because I know I can put a lot of stuff on our website, but like, that's not hitting the target audience of students likely. And so that's another thing I think of, like like, in addition to listening and actually doing something, like, how do you actually get information up? Like, do they read the nice things that you have in the hallways, you know, and that sort of stuff. So that's something I think too to think about.
Is there a student newspaper at the high school?
There is.
There is?
Yep.
So maybe one, if there could be someone that
It's-
reports out on that?
Yeah, it's electronic, but,
Okay.
Mhm.
Is it the skipper's log?
no, it's the,
Current
wave.
wave.
Current wave, I was like, it has something to do with something.
Had to do with
Clearly I did not
waves.
write for it.
And we also, our weekly newsletters that
Yeah.
go out, our kids actually, like, they read them. They actually read them, so.
Other thoughts, Melissa, any, or anyone else hasn't? What do we all think about, so we talked about, and so like, I definitely, you all had some good thoughts here for sure, and that we can share with the school committee and share with that will then obviously get shared with the administration via that route. Any thoughts on how to hear and listen and make sure that, like, the most, like, marginalized students in the district are heard? Like, I heard you say, like, you know, that ones connected to student groups or student orgs, like, they have a pretty good way to have a voice because they have an advisor, and, you know, like, they can learn the processes of what to do if you want to make change. But, like, any thoughts on, like, for those students that are just coming to school, maybe are engaged but then leave, or, like, maybe don't have that teacher they've connected with or whatnot, how maybe you can get them get feedback from them or thoughts from them, what might work?
I think that really ties into number 7 on the agenda.
Well, and I think that, you know,
This-
we have advisories, so every
It
student
does,
has an
it does tie
advisor.
in there.
Yeah, and we do like a connection survey at the high school. I don't know if there's something similar at the
There
middle
is.
school, where they feel more comfortable giving general feedback anonymously. But I do think if we want to cover all different groups of students, I think that we have to do what Chloe said, different things, right? So one is visiting the groups, but then the other one, maybe just having a mechanism for feedback through surveys, like, you know, whatever that may be, like at the end of every semester, that's what we do. Like, everybody, all the teachers give out a survey. Then at the end of the year, all the administrators, building administrators send out a survey to teachers. So it just becomes a culture, but it's a system and a mechanism that exists. Hopefully that covers a wider net of students compared to just the groups. But so now we're doing different ways, but we're collecting feedback. That's just my thoughts.
And then, one last, just one point I want to make, and, so I wonder how, I don't know if they are gonna do it again this year, but, I've got the privilege to go to the senior presentations, the projects that they've done, and then also the Democracy Day presentations. Like, there's all of that great work that the high school students do. And, last year I left, and the list was like wild of like the things that we could do. And so I'm always thinking about, like, how do we capture moments like that when they're telling us the things, right? And we're actively listening, but then, like, where do those things go? Like, how do we get action on those, especially with timelines? Because, like, I remember when we went to whatever the one, must have been the senior one at the end of the year, like, budgets were already set. So I was, like, looking at all these great ideas, being like, okay, we don't have any money to do any of that. Like, but so I'm trying to think of, like, the timeline too of when we get feedback, and also how do we capitalize on the really cool things that they're telling us they want and need. And not that we haven't been able to do any of those. The late bus is a huge example of that, right? That was, many students have done their project on that. Many groups like advocated for that. But there's already some info out there too. So I think it's thinking about how do we take those moments and, you know, move that forward.
So some of that thing at the high school, what we do is, you know, the kids will come up with an idea, like they want to have these little inserts on the water stations. So what we'll do is we'll kind of like guide them through, and they might write a proposal. It depends on how deep they can get sometimes, but they currently, a couple years ago, just for an example, we had amazing group of students that wrote a project. They had funds collected through GoFundMe, and they had this vision, they had the money, they worked so hard. Their documents that they had produced were like unbelievable, a well-written proposal. And what we found out was it didn't go through because of something that happened, that whoever made the decision above us to say, you know, we can't have this at the high school because we don't have them at the other schools, and that would be an equity thing. But again, now we're in a different place. So what we did is some students wanted to bring that project back. So we connected them to those students that had done the project. So they're starting over. They're not starting over, but they're gonna take their work and continue it. So, Erin, like to answer your question, we try to do that when we get that type of feedback from them. So now we're empowering them. Maybe we'll have them by the end of this year, by the end of their senior project. Or sometimes they leave their project to the next group to say, this is the research we have done. And then we try to say, all right, let's find a group of students that are willing to implement this now, and we support them that way. So, hopefully that is taking their feedback and trying to make it more tangible.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, I'm thinking at much more of a system, like a really
Systematic.
big level. Yeah, like I know that you all really, I know when students, like that action's happening, but I'm trying to think of how do you get those things into a district budget? How do you get those things prioritized on lists because it's important to students? Like that really high level. And what you all are doing is amazing at the building level. Right? That sounds amazing. Plus you're teaching them invaluable skills, right? Advocacy skills, planning skills, collaboration skills. So that's awesome too. But I'm trying to think of just how to wrap it around. And one thing, Shawali, also I loved what you said about how do you take feedback from one school and then apply it to all schools, right? How is that sharing? How do we make sure that if these students have a great idea and are doing this great thing, if it's needed everywhere, we make sure that it trickles across too, which is interesting. There's thoughts, and then we'll go to the next one.
I mean, I'll just add to that, obviously we all know this, because we're here, that change is always hard. It always takes more time than people, I think, realize. I think sometimes, students don't have that perspective all the time, that they see something that they view as being a problem, and it is a problem. It's often a legitimate problem, but it's change can take time to take shape, and maybe educating kids a little bit about that and talking about how a lot of different considerations have to be made, and when making decisions at a public school level, it's there's a lot of different factors that have to go into that, and just making sure we can communicate that as best we can. I personally, I would love to hear proposed changes or ideas from students, through senior project or through any other way. And I think it's great to do what we can to make those happen. So yeah, I think again, the more we can communicate, the better.
Erin, I'm not familiar with the intricacies of the budget process, so that's my disclaimer. But is there, and I'm not familiar with this stuff at my kids are still in the elementary school, so I don't know what's happening up with the older kids. Love what I'm hearing, senior projects, whatever. Is there an opportunity to set money aside when the budget process is happening, that there's no necessarily a defined purpose for this, but is it earmarked potentially for if there is a student need, something comes up from one of these projects, it's a great idea, well, now we have the money set aside for something. And is there some kind of process to further encourage students' feedback to giving some of these ideas, knowing that, this might actually happen in my lifetime if there's a pot set aside. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, I can give it a try, and then for some of you who have been through the process a couple times, in theory, I think it is possible. The way the budget gets kind of split up or defined is the process starts a couple weeks ago with the administration really doing a lot of listening and working with the different building administrators, et cetera, who are kind of determining need, and they do a zero-based budget, I believe, in this district. So they start and just build up instead of looking at the previous years and what was spent, et cetera. And so then drafts get presented to the school committee works through it, and it does get down to the point where there is a line item budget that does get approved. And so in theory, you could have something like that. It just would be figuring out what to allocate, how to allocate it, and what area kind of it is, and also where the funding would come from. So, but I do think it could be possible.
It could, it definitely could. And I think, it's complicated, and because we're talking about hypothetical ideas, so you know what I mean. So you don't necessarily know for sure. What we try to do, just on the front end, is we try to communicate what our goals are. You know what I mean? So our district goals, our school goals, we try to get that out there to say, this is what we're working towards in a macro sense, so we want to kind of have that filtered down to our budgeting process, to how we decide to use our time, to how we decide to make decisions on resources, so on and so forth. That doesn't mean that there's not wiggle room and ability to kind of shift, but that's kind of what we try to do, because, you know, our budget numbers are much more limited than they might appear. You know, most of the budget, the vast majority of the budget is spoken for before, you know what I mean, from a year-to-year basis. So it's tricky, but like, I think that that's where, again, just having an awareness at the building level, having a communication going at the building level, having that kind of a, you know, like an understanding of where the gaps are, is where we can make that work. You know, depending on what it is, though. Sometimes it's a little more.
I mean, in hearing what you all shared and knowing like my kid is far from that experience, but like, wouldn't that be cool if like high schoolers heard like, oh, there's $1,000 set aside if we can plan all the skills that you talked about, but now we're adding budgeting skills. And if we have a plan to create change, and how do we use the budgeted, like, that would be pretty cool and potentially
could be incorporated
motivating.
into curriculum too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would also not discredit the elementary or middle school students either. I get a lot of ideas from 8-year-olds and 5-year-olds in my small N of 2. And so, you know, like, I think they have a pretty interesting perspective too on like, it might be a little different, and like what the supports they would need would be different than what older kids would need, but like, I do think there's something there.
And I didn't mean to discredit my.
Oh, no, I know what you meant, I know.
Smart, yeah.
No, but like, I do, I'm always shocked at when I go to them, I ask every student I see in the district usually, if wherever I am, I'll be like, hey, like, what do you think about your school? What idea do you have? And like, kindergartners up will have a thought, or like, wherever we are, if we're at the soccer field or wherever, so. All right, anything else on this topic? There was a lot of good discussion, I think, and things to think about, bring to the school committee, and then also work with the administration on as far as this. The only thing that I kept thinking about too, Rob especially, is thinking about our strategic plan and like how we can connect student voice to that. I think is good too, because I think there's going to be a million things, right, that we could do, but for me, it always comes back to like, what is our strategic plan, and like specifically about what the strategic plan, what can we get students' voices or input on? So like, if one of our goals, one of the ones I can think of right now is like increasing that RICAS score, right? That's one of our goals, right? Like, how can we get student voice on strategies to do that, right? Or, you know, so trying to connect it always, I think, back to that is important, because if not, you're kind of just throwing spaghetti at the wall, and which is important sometimes, because it really matters to students, but it's not helping the district, like, as a vision, like, move forward, so, interesting. All right.
I wonder if maybe a grant writing club or something at the high school might also help address something like that, if there was interest.
Do you have a financial literacy class at the high school? Yeah. That's cool.
And a strong DECA program.
Very good program.
Yeah. So student voice, it is embedded within goal 3 of our plan, under the DEI initiative, because the DEI initiative obviously incorporates this as part of it. So it's kind of, you know, it's not a direct initiative that's in the plan, but it is embedded within that. Initiative.
And I was talking about like not even having it be a direct one, but like just the lens we look at any issue, right? So like if one of our goals is to try to increase RICAS scores in math, in reading or math or whatever it was, like how can we get, because the piece that stuck with me from the equity audit was in decision making.
Yes.
Like, it's not just that was the piece. So like when we're making decisions about things, how do we get student voice in that? So, but I think Rob, especially, you have a very good perspective of that. I think from your role as principal,
thank you,
like you can see your passion of like really caring about it. No, I want to acknowledge that because that's really important. And Shivali, I know the students feel so heard from you too. So it's just again trying to build from what we already have and see what else we can do.
One of the things I immediately thought about when you said that, Erin, was right now at our SIP committee, which has students on it, we're going over the district strategic plan with them and kind of getting that same type of feedback. And once we have that all information, we would pass it to the district. So again, we do it in little chunks, but I know what you're talking about. You want to think about like systematically,
or even just
like larger scale,
or even just documenting those little chunks so that we can show progress and show, like you all might know, but like the students might not know, the community members might not know. So it's maybe a little bit of both. So. Anything else on that? Right, great chat. Let's move on to the next item, which is an update and discussion on NKSD equity vision statement work.
I'm just gonna turn the screen on real quick because it'll be easier if I can display what I'm gonna show here, just so
Great.
we're not.
Does that have to face the screen?
Most certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, just.
Just give it a sec. Just give me 1 second here. All right, thanks. This will just be easier, I think, if you have the text in front of you. So I just want to give a quick, so in the process of trying to establish an equity vision statement, we wanted to bring in the perspective of, of our students, right? So we started with going out to the what is it? The
REA.
REA is Race and Equity Alliance, Racial Equity Alliance, students at the high school. And so what I did is I brought with them some statements. I'm gonna be full transparency. This statement that's up on the board here, I got from ChatGPT. I literally typed into ChatGPT, what do you have for equity vision statements out there for schools? And it gave me this, and I thought it was pretty good. I added North Kingstown schools. I did tell your students. I did. I was like, I gotta be honest. I can't be. So anyway, here's what we came, and this is just what we're working off of. So, in North Kingstown schools, we envision a learning community where every student, regardless of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, ability, or background, has the opportunity to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. We are committed to fostering an inclusive and equitable educational environment that celebrates diversity, embraces individual strengths, and ensures that each student receives the support they need to reach their full potential. Our goal is to create a school district where every student feels valued, empowered, and prepared for success in a diverse and rapidly changing world. Through intentional policies, practices, and partnerships, we strive to eliminate disparities, promote fairness, and cultivate a culture of belonging that prepares our students to be compassionate, informed, and engaged global citizens. So I just thought it was a good place to start, as far as like building from something. I also went and did like a Google search just for like equity vision statements that exist somewhere in other districts. And so we pulled those up. That's what this link is here. So with the REA group, we started with this base statement, and then we kind of went through these examples, which were examples of equity vision statements that came from different school districts. So we went through all of these. I'm not going to read all these, but we went through all of them. And basically what the REA group did is they came up with some feedback, okay, based on the original statement, the ChatGPT statement, and then the others that we looked at, and then some that were just kind of from them. All right, so these are some of the things they added. So they said make a direct inclusion of sexual orientation in addition to the others. They noted that was not in the original statement, which I think is a completely fair thing to add. An ongoing commitment to refine curricula, resource allocation, policies, and practices that result in equitable opportunities and participation throughout our educational system. That came from one of the other policies that we read that the group felt was kind of like, and again, we'll wordsmith it. You know what I mean? It's not we'll make it sound good, but like they thought that was a good thing that we could sort of like embed into the statement.
From the
yeah. This was another one that they pulled from another statement to develop thought leaders throughout the North Kingstown school community who feel empowered to advocate for and affect change in the pursuit of a socially just and anti-racist society. Was another statement they felt could kind of fit nicely. And then we also, community partners, adding something in there about community partnership explicitly in the statement was feedback they had. Some questions they came up with were, how do we clearly communicate types of language, behavior, etc. that is unacceptable? So they threw out examples like offensive jokes or using language towards others. They saw this as something that they've experienced, or at least like been a party to, that happens at the high school, you know? So they talked about that, and how do we make sure that's explicitly made clear? Also, they put in there, how will we ensure that our vision statement is more than just words? How will we track progress on how it is being implemented? Which is an awesome question, you know what I mean? And we had a good discussion around that, actually, from the student who generated that, because it's a great point. And, it's obviously, a statement's great, but it's very much just the start of something. So it was a great conversation. The students were really thoughtful. The next step in the process is I'm going to be going to meet with the SAGA group when we get back from break. I think it's on January 4th is the next meeting. Something along those lines.
I don't know off the top of my head, but
Yeah,
yes,
it's the week we get back, I know
Thursday.
that.
Yeah.
So we're going to basically kind of follow the same process with them, and we're going to just kind of gather their feedback and what they see in the statement and what they would add or change. But, and I thought after that happens, we'll see where we are, and then I can kind of wordsmith something up as best I can, incorporating some of these different ideas, and maybe bring it to this group to give it a look. Does it sound all right?
That's good.
Okay.
Other suggestions maybe to the administration on like other ways to get maybe other voice? Like, I think it's awesome that those two groups are definitely where I would start, but any suggestions on like other ways to get feedback from students or in any way on this vision statement? Equity vision statement?
I wonder if a link, like a QR code, could be included underneath the statement and have it posted in various areas, maybe the library, maybe the workout room, maybe the art rooms or something like that. And it's just so like more people will see it and respond, perhaps.
Would it be a QR code to like a feedback form or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think, especially when in a group of their peers, it might be hard to speak up, or they
Yeah,
might
it's
not
true.
want to, like giving a different modality to giving feedback might be helpful.
Would we, I'm just thinking out loud, would we want the feedback to be provided in that sort of a form? Would we want it to be something where it was anonymous, or would we want it to be something where we would want to collect names of people? And the only reason I ask that is because I think we want it to be productive.
I would maybe say, where did you find this QR code that inspired you to respond?
Okay.
I saw it in the weight room. I
Okay.
saw it in along the spine by the plants
And
or
even
something.
cooler than that, you can make different ones, so then you would know which one they used.
Would there be any objection to letting the students disclose their, like, who's submitting it? Because it's,
I can see pros and cons to both.
Mm.
So I can see students being more open if it's anonymous, that they would feel more free to be, open with their thoughts. However, I think it would be probably more productive for us in getting a statement if we knew where it was coming from, so we could follow up with that person.
Make it
to
optional.
Make it optional,
clarify.
maybe?
Yeah, so maybe make it optional.
Yeah.
Are there
And again, we're
detention
just,
Is there a detention area or like ISS area? You could post one there.
oh yes, we do
You get
have the.
lots of valuable information from there.
Yeah.
I was just thinking like, and again, we're just asking about the vision statement, right? We've already done the equity audit. Students have already told us their stories. Like, it's just like, hey, this statement, like, we're working on the statement, give us feedback, right? Like, I just think like, that's, like, they can give it, they can not. They might write silly stuff, they might not. Like, they write silly stuff, we delete it. Like, I just think giving an opportunity for students who might not be willing to speak up in a space with their peers, where they don't want to feel like embarrassed or called out or think their idea is silly or whatever is good. Like,
Yeah.
whatever way that makes sense for the educators.
And we could put it in the newsletter too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would we want to ask feedback from staff?
I think you want, I think as a community equity vision statement, you want feedback from as many folks as possible, but maybe at different levels, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love what you're doing right now, starting with the students and giving them something to work off of and having them tweak that, right? I don't think you need to do that process with every group.
No.
But like, then you can build towards it, and as you get closer to the final draft, maybe getting, like, maybe the next step is getting staff, right? Because they're the heart of the community,
Gotcha.
like in the schools. And then when you get a little more refined, maybe go out to parents and guardians and folks. You know, I don't think it has to be at every level,
Like a
but I do
tiered
think,
process.
yeah, I think
Okay.
that is good. Just that way everybody has some buy-in too and is reading it and thinking about it. Like that's part of the process too, I think.
All right, so maybe, and again, we can kind of, you know, this might be tweaked depending on how things go, but if we kind of have a vision of meeting with the SAGA group, going through this process again, from there, sort of forming up a more refined statement that incorporates different, you know, different elements of feedback into it. And from there, maybe then go into Dave's idea of looking at a feedback form, QR code option for kids to give feedback. And then from there, maybe pushing it out to teachers and kind of seeing what that gives us.
Yeah. Another interesting fun thing you could do is as different student groups ask questions, you could see if the next group could answer them. So like you could pose those questions to the group and be like, what do you think? Like, how do we do this? Like, and like you get like you could tier it like that. That could be fun.
That could be part of the,
Yeah.
that could
And then
actually
they
be
could
part of the
say,
feedback
what other
process.
questions do you have, right? You know, like the other thing I think is important, and I don't know how K-12 educators do this, is once it's done, like making sure that it's at like a understanding level of the community members, right? So like using language that elementary school students could understand. You know, like I think you want to make sure that that the statement itself is accessible to our community, and so just making sure like if we can use a word that would be understandable to an elementary school, try to use that word when we can, like just making
Right.
it not super high
Yep, I understand.
level.
Making it accessible, like widely, you know what I mean, and not like jargony.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I hear you.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, so that anybody that maybe doesn't have a big background in this area might be able to
Absolutely,
understand it, or
It's got to be something that is it's a statement that's got to be universally understood. We don't want to make it too educatory.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
We can be that way sometimes, you know. We don't want to do that.
Yeah. Other thoughts?
They were sitting in the meeting using all those words.
Yeah.
and People look at us.
Well, that might be cool too if you're going to go to the elementary schools. You could say like once it like you'd be like, hey, this is this. What words like which ones do you need to find? Like which ones like you could actually have like them give you interesting feedback. I think too.
Okay.
I'll bring my kids back to a meeting again if you want. To see if they,
We can use them as the metrics. That's any other thoughts or feedback or questions, Rob, that you all have as far as kind of the process where it is? I think where you are is great progress.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Chloe was a big contributor to this too. I want to make sure that it's not work.
Good job, Chloe.
I'll be at the Saga meeting too.
Yep,
I'm the
yep.
president, so I'll be there.
Any feedback to Mr. Mezzanotte on how he approached the group? Like,
I thought it was great. It was really
Awesome.
constructive meeting, and I feel like the presentation pretty much covered all of our thoughts.
That's great.
Oh, positive feedback.
Yeah, it was awesome. It really was. The kids were so good. They
That's
really
awesome.
were. They were like just really thoughtful group of kids, you know.
very awesome. Okay, great. And so I can't remember if we set a timeline, right, on the equity vision statement?
We did.
Was it the end of the school year?
Yeah, it was the end of the school year.
That
We
was
were gonna
off the
be-
top of my head.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we're doing great is what
Yeah,
I
we'll
wanted
be
to
in good
say.
shape
Yeah,
for that.
as far
Yeah.
as where we're at with it, where we are in the calendar, but I did think we did a realistic one, which was
Yep.
good.
Mhm.
Okay, so next item on the agenda, this meeting is scheduled till 7.
Yeah.
I have a bad habit of like being excited and then a meeting's supposed to end at 7 and then people are staring at me like, why are you doing this to us? Okay, so item 7 is for the committee to talk about one of the other things that were identified in the equity audit that we haven't talked through exactly, which is discuss ways to increase diversity in the workforce in NKSD with some, maybe putting forward some possible actions for recommendations to the school committee. And so this is kind of looking at another one of the things that we have identified through the equity audit that we kind of want to look at and get some feedback from the subcommittee on as far as their thoughts on that and potential recommendations if we get that far. So, thoughts?
What kind of diversity are we talking about here?
Probably all. No, it's a great question, right? Thoughts on that? Thoughts?
Well, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not gonna, I mean, I think we all know that, it's a challenge. It's really critically important, but it's really hard. Because it's very, I think that your question, Marissa, was right on, like, what are you talking about in terms of diversity? Because that, to me, like, you know, and this is kind of fresh in my mind because I was involved in at a meeting today where we were talking about this, where it's about understanding, like, that we are not defined by one thing. Nobody is, you know what I mean? And making sure that that's not like the way that we view everybody. You know, people have multi-dimensions, you know, and making sure that that's understood across the board, you know, and I think that there's I don't know, like it's
Okay, so, yes.
yeah, I don't know where I'm going.
Okay,
but-
that's right. Okay, so I was just trying, my internet doesn't like me in this room. No, I totally understand what you're saying, but, so, when I have a really hard problem, right, that's not an easy fix, which I don't believe this one is an easy fix, and I think it's a multifaceted problem. Usually the first thing that I try to do is define the problem, not define the solution, because, like, if you don't know what you're trying to solve, it's hard to solve it, and so, like, yes, we know that we would like to increase the diversity of our workforce. I think particularly the teachers, like the ones that are in the classrooms with students, in a multifaceted type of way. So why do we think that is hard for us here? Like, maybe if we start with what do we think maybe some of the barriers or some of the problems are? And this is not unique to North Kingstown by any means. So so what do we think the problem is? Like, maybe if we start there, we can build up to how do we solve said problem?
I think logistically, it's just the applications you receive, right? Like, when you receive the application, you match it against the criteria for work. And so that's the lens you have, and you're just, scanning through. Then you set up your interviews. Let's say you selected 5 out of 15. Then you select the 5, and then if there's no representation, let's say, or there's like 1 out of 5 representation of any, let's say, diversity that you're looking for.
And when we're saying, I would use the non-discrimination clause that, like, the district had, like, I would go with any of those categories, like that, like, if we're, like, to be really broad with it.
Yeah.
I do think if we look at the equity audit, though, I feel like they specifically called out educators with racial diversity, I think. Again, though, I would go back to baseline, like, what is our baseline? And I think, like, in my head, like, being proportional to our student body would be good, like, in different areas, and I don't believe that the district is close to that. Like, really, not even like close.
And again, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
like, that is true across our profession.
Yeah.
It's true across our profession. It is a major gap.
Okay, so one challenge I heard Chivali say in trying to define the problem is that the applicant pools, you're looking to match criteria for, like, the job, and then once you get down to kind of like a finalist pool, like that pool might have lack of diversity in
Right,
it.
or
Yeah.
the proportion may be just very off.
Yeah.
right?
Okay, other possibilities of why this problem exists?
I think we've been discussing it for maybe 5 years or so openly in places like this. Like, we've all known for a while, and we've said we need a diverse workforce. But openly discussing it and talking about solutions has only started to happen recently.
Okay.
And in the past, that means we have people who have entered this career in this district and are committed to the district. So they're going to be here for maybe 20, 25, 30 more years.
Low turnover.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's true.
Wasn't discussed, wasn't openly discussed, right? I heard that too. So, like, great. Okay, why else is this a problem?
Well, I mean,
I've got a list of like 40 in my head.
Yeah,
so,
I
like,
mean,
you get like this is not a 1 or 2 things. I think there's like probably 40 or 50 things contributing to this issue. But I do believe that with intentionality, you can make progress on things. Like, and so it's just kind of figuring out, like, where are the opportunities, what problems could we try to chip away at?
I'm not going to say this is a definitive a definitive like cause, but it's a wonder of mine, okay? It's a wonder of mine in terms of, based on the data that we see, and we're looking at it from a discipline lens, right? We're already decided that that's an area that's been identified, that we're looking at through a discipline lens. You can look at it through an academic achievement lens, which we also have talked about, okay? But when you look at the performance of different, specifically racial subgroups, okay, in these different areas of school, it's a wonder of mine to say that data is kind of sending a bit of a message that there's a trend of not feeling belonged, not feeling a sense of belonging, right? When you exhibit behaviors that consistently, like result in suspension or have that happen, when you consistently exhibit behaviors that result in failing grades and low achievement, okay? And I'm not saying that that's what's reality based on the data we're seeing. To me, there's a understanding there that there's a lack of belonging in a pretty wide scale, and that worries me, because when there's a lack of belonging, then how are you going to attract diversity to the profession? If there's
If
a
you
lack of
hated
belonging
school,
as a
you're not
senior.
gonna go be a teacher, maybe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the opposite, you hated school and therefore you did want to become a teacher. It could happen.
But we're not seeing as much of that.
No, probably not.
You know what I
but-
mean? We're not seeing as much of that. So my point is we gotta, like the hard work that needs to take place, as far as I see it is concerned, is we have to really look very critically at our practices as a system that are producing the kind of results that we're seeing, and how we can intentionally change it.
So it's a pipe. So what I'm hearing you say is it's a pipeline issue.
Yes.
Right? If you don't have students majoring in education, you're not going to have educators to pick from. But then you might not have students picking education as a major if they didn't have a good experience in their education.
Yes.
And so we can bring it all the way back down to here. It's a nice circle, because then it's a nice perpetual circle, which is why it's hard. What are other thoughts on problems or challenges that are leading to North Kingstown School Department having a lack of diversity in our workforce?
I think one of the solutions we've taken in recent years.
I only want problems.
I know, you only want problems?
I do only want problems, but you can give me a solution. It's okay.
Well, one of the solutions to get us there is the diversity of the curricula, and I think more children see themselves represented in the materials
Okay.
with which they are
That's like a
interacting.
nice solution.
So that is bringing us, it brings us to the problem of, we have the diverse curricula, but we don't have the diverse group of people presenting it.
Oh, okay.
So,
A problem with the solution. Okay, I'll take it. Thank you.
Okay.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Gold star. No, that's a really valid point, right? So that,
the
I do think
problem-
that the district has made some strides there.
Right,
Yeah.
so how do we actively
awesome.
recruit diverse educators to our system?
I would like to add to that, Angela, not just recruit, but
Retain.
Because I
Recruit
do-
and retain.
It's an uncomfortable truth that there are some people that I know personally that were not comfortable in the district.
Yep,
People from diverse backgrounds?
Yes.
yes,
Interesting.
yes.
But we know that from the equity audit. We don't even need to guess that, right? We know that. The curriculum being taught, a diverse curriculum being taught by not diverse staff is interesting. I wrote that down. What else do we think is a problem? Specifically, maybe in North Kingstown, or big. Yeah, like we can take small problems or big problems, right?
So back to the recruitment thing, I feel like we've talked about this at this table before, like that, where are we putting open job descriptions?
Yep.
And I feel like we looked at one on the screen, I have a vague memory of this.
We did.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm not making it up.
No,
So, yeah, like,
but what happens when it's out there? Right, like, who's seeing it and who's responding and how do we know?
Yeah.
or do you broaden where you put it out, or, I don't, because I'm not familiar exactly where everything.
Yeah, the majority of jobs, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, goes on a thing that I had never heard of before I was on the school committee,
Spring.
which was called School Spring.
Yeah.
There's it's very cool actually. I would like it in higher ed. We don't have it. It's like a centralized
Okay.
website that all the K-12 education jobs get posted on, right?
Yep.
and it's not just Rhode Island, it's like
Everywhere.
national.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We don't have it, I don't think. If we do, I've never seen it, which is why I worked in the same place for 20 years. But I'm joking. And so it goes there, but then so it's well advertised there, but then like if it's not yielding the results that we're hoping for, like there needs to be something else, and so then the question goes back to like, are there even people to recruit?
Yeah.
Right, like,
Yeah.
and I think the answer is
Which
probably
is-
yes,
yeah.
yeah, but, yeah.
Because having been on a lot of
Like,
interview
yeah.
teams, and Shivali kind of alluded
Yeah.
to this earlier, there's a process, you post a job,
Yeah.
you applicants apply, you have a posting period, you look at the applicant's qualifications, you decide based on those qualifications who's going to be part of the interview, and then they show up to interview and they are who they are. You know what I mean? Based on their qualifications that brought them to the interview. I'm just saying from my experience doing that, like there have been very few, statistically speaking, diverse applicants.
The other
And-
thing,
and-
that's interesting, I think, about K-12 is the very specific, and this is important, licensures and requirements, and like I've seen jobs in this district that I'm like, oh, I know the person that would do such a good job there, but because they didn't come through a K-12 pipeline, like in their, like they weren't an elementary school teacher or whatever, they can't do that administrator job or that teaching job, even though they probably be great at it, they don't have that thing, and to get that thing, it's not easy,
It's a lot
and
of
it's not
hoops to jump
cheap.
through, yeah.
So I think that's another thing, is like, if people later in their careers want to come and work in K-12, that's not an easy journey whatsoever.
No.
I also would say, another issue that I see is the money like thing. So as you move up in a district, you move up in steps, and then like it seems to me hard to transfer like districts. Like it seems like people don't jump a lot.
It depends.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the position. There's
Yeah.
there's some positions where
I
there's
meant
such
like
a
at the
demand
teacher
for them.
level.
Yeah, so there's some teaching positions depending on the demand, like, you know, like,
Spanish or something,
Yeah,
yeah.
whether it's world language, MLL, special education. There's always going to be positions that you can jump to in other districts, and in some other positions, it's harder, just
Yeah.
because there's just more people with the cert. So jumping from one district to another is going to be more restrictive for certain certs.
Okay. What are other?
I don't know if this is a problem, but it's a potential problem, and it's willingness to work together and communication, because I believe that most local districts are probably having this conversation. I believe RIDE is having this conversation, and I believe the unions and NERI is having this conversation. And I don't know if RIDE and NERI have spoken about this together, or the districts have spoken. But that would be really beneficial. And the certification process for teachers, I think we're paired with some states, probably Connecticut and Massachusetts, where we'll get a relatively similar educator pool, but maybe not Florida or Georgia or Tennessee, where if their certification's transferred, it might be easier to maybe advertise down there, hey, they don't pay you very well down there and you don't have a strong union, but up here, you're gonna have good pay, strong unions, and be well supported.
Right, but they'd have to pass the Rhode Island praxis.
Right.
Right. Or the MCAT.
I think that's a great point, and I wonder, this is a North Kingstown problem, but I also wonder if the scope of this is really outside of like, what, like, we can do some things, but like, I wonder if there's gotta be an intentional,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean, state level.
Well, and that's where the school
You know?
committees, the school committees are
You know what I
interesting
mean?
because there are, so the school committees, in my view of where I've been in the past year, they go up and they go down, right? So like, that's the really interesting part, is that like, there's potential to work with the legislators and work with the politicians at the General Assembly to have changes and ride and different things alongside with the administrators. And then there's also like, what can we do here with policy and whatnot? That's what I meant by like up and down. And so I think it's both, right? Like I think as a district, and a strong district in the state, like upper advocacy is really important, and trying to figure out what we want to advocate for is important, that we think will have the most potential impact of positivity here. And then also like what small things or what things we can do here to try to do things while that's happening. Like I think you have to kind of do both, because it's like, just some of the things like, are, yeah, I think there's potential for both, which is interesting. But also like how to approach it is interesting too.
Yeah.
It's big though, yeah.
It is, and I just think that I think there's gotta be examples out there of states that have made these types of efforts and like what strategies they followed to try to do that, and how they again intentionally seeking or recruiting diverse teachers.
Workforce, yeah.
You know what I mean? And what tactics they use, what strategies they use, how they went about it, what incentives they offered, what training programs they offered. There's got to be stuff out there about this. I just don't know. Maybe there are districts that have done it. I'm not familiar with any who have, but maybe there are. Maybe it's, or maybe it was more of a state level thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a combination of both.
I would
you know?
say, like, at the higher ed level, like, it's different up there. Like, it's, like, we still have these same conversations, but, like, I think we've made a little more progress. There's things that we do up at URI that we don't do here in this district.
Like, to your point, higher ed as a whole, like, are looking at, do they really need the master's or do they really need the PhD, and really examining why for that particular thing. Licensures, that's kind of the connection that I made when you were talking about that.
Okay, so you're a little more flexible in terms of the.
Well, I think we're having those conversations about like what are job
Really
requirements, what needs to be in them.
Yeah, like does years of experience or whatever, like those things that are written
What barriers
down.
are we putting in place that we maybe could remove?
I wonder this, and this would be, I mean, we have programs in high schools, right? We're working on one in our high school right now, education CTE programs, right? So a program, an intentional program at the school level to identify students interested in a career in education, package some classes together that they can take in successive years that'll get them to a certification point that's going to put them ahead of their peers and on track to kind of go that route as far as education is concerned. I guess my wonder is like, and maybe we can look into this at like the statewide level, either through like, you know, my like Superintendent Association, Principals Association. Is there a way to kind of design that to intentionally recruit diverse students into a program like that?
I mean, that's what I wondered, like, do we have that at URI, like a career fair, but for education specific? You know, College of Business does that, like, they have tech stuff, but I don't think they have one for College of Ed, right? But, I mean, if pipeline is a potential barrier, right? Like, is there a practice regularly of when there's job openings for folks from the district going out to recruit? And do you make contact with local or whoever has the right licensures, whatever colleges of education at, you know, geographically, whatever makes sense? Are we reaching out that far to say, hey, this school district exists and here are our values and that sort of thing? Or how do you recruit student teachers even, or things like that is where I went.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are at 6:59. Great conversation. No, but I think, but continue to ponder, like, what are the problems, right? Because we didn't even, like, there's more, for sure. And then, I think to Rob's point and some others, like, what can we do? Because I think you also have to own your problem, right? And so, like, NK has to own part of the problem, right? And so, again, like, what parts do we own that we can work on and fix and do different things? And then what are the things that we need to advocate or lobby to the state for? Like, and then what are some short-term things that we can be doing versus what are some long-term things we can be doing? Like, I think it's going to be one of those ones that this committee's recommendation isn't going to be like, oh, just do this one thing and that will fix the thing. Because as a couple of you pointed out, it is a big circle, right? Like, it's hard to retain teachers in a district where you don't have a lot of diversity, but it's hard to recruit people when you don't have a lot of diversity, and it's hard to recruit people when there aren't people to recruit, but you can't get people to recruit because they don't like school. Like, it's like this circle is just circling, but I do think you can interrupt with intention. So great conversation. Does anybody want to propose any action at this point, or is it? My recommendation would be no, but we can report out on it and then
I want
maybe
to
the
study it
school.
more.
Huh?
I think I'd like to study it more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think action at this point might be a little premature.
Not action, but like what I meant by action is a recommendation to the school committee. Like, no, right? We're not ready
I
for
don't have
that.
a recommendation
Yeah.
for that. I guess I'm just curious to learn more about, like, I understand this portal where jobs are posted, but how active elsewhere, like, where are jobs posted, if elsewhere, or how are people actively going out to, like I said,
Right, the
like
recruitment.
colleges and stuff,
Yeah, and
right?
like-
fairs and stuff.
I also think
So
about, we
maybe some
talked
more
about.
baseline info.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
talked about the logic models, and they talked about like, what is, are there low-hanging fruit with this that we could look at? You know what I mean? Is there anything that's like a quick step that we could take to like sort of get at this, like,
Yep.
because I,
So maybe understanding, learning more about what the baseline is of what North Kingstown's doing right now. So and maybe that's something, so, like, would the recommendation be, I feel bad, like, as the words are coming out of my mouth, I feel bad, like, a request for data regarding, like, from HR, like, where things are posted, like, you know, like, some like, tangible information to come here, or ask the HR person to come to a future meeting, maybe to talk through the recruitment things and, or something like that. Would that be useful? Or maybe quantitative data on like how many job, you know, like, yeah.
do you want me to bring something back to the next meeting?
Well, so this is that advisory committee to the school committee. So
Right,
the school
right.
committee would, so it's
Okay.
just like, or if we want, yeah, like we could do that and then
Okay.
you all can make a recommendation. It's whatever, I know it's
Yeah.
weird.
I just don't know if we're ready to make a recommendation to the
No,
school committee yet.
Of course
I
not.
don't-
You can
yeah.
make a request for data, I guess, is
Yeah.
what I was saying. Like, you
Okay.
could say to the school committee, hey, the DEI subcommittee would like a request for kind of what our baseline is, right? What's our workforce look like? What are our current practices, right? And then that would at least give you some info to
Okay.
work on. Do you want to do that?
Well, I mean, I guess my
Or
question is, do we have to do that to the school committee, or can we just do that?
Yeah.
So in theory, this body
Mhm.
can't ask the administration to do work, right?
But the administration
If he's
can do it.
I know.
Can
they offer?
Procedurally, yeah.
Procedurally, I would recommend it goes up to the school committee, so at least they're aware of the conversation, and then whatever, they can do whatever with it. I know it's silly, but this is a very advisory group, because it's also super silly, because you're you and I'm me, but then.
No, I get it, yeah.
But if you all think that's, like, we could also just say, okay, Rob will bring us some stuff, and that's fine too, like, we could, however y'all wanna do it.
I'm happy to bring us stuff.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that. I know, she's right down the hall.
Yeah. Is there anything specific? I know it's 7:03.
Oh, sorry.
So I guess, no, we're wrapping up. So I guess if there's anything specific in your brain, send it to Rob. Like you can email and say, hey, I'd be curious about if there's something specific that we didn't talk about. And then, if possible, we'll have it at the next meeting and work through it. 2024 meeting schedule. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know. Do you have any dates in 2024?
I assumed it was gonna be the third Wednesday of every month.
Is
That's
that,
what I
yeah.
thought too.
Okay, so what I will do is I will ask Jen when she is feeling better to send you all the dates that, like, just because there's sometimes it's easy to say that and then you hit a holiday, you hit a whatever, and it gets all wacky. And so I will have her, I'm assuming if she had been here, she would have worked through what she thought the dates were and gotten feedback from people. So I will have her do that electronically. And we do not have a date set for our next meeting, but normally it would have been.
Well, the third Wednesday of
Why
January
do you
would be
think
the
I'm done at
17th.
7:04? Like, goodness gracious.
I cannot make the 17th, it's my brother's birthday, but.
Happy birthday to your
that's-
brother.
That's fine.
We have a school,
I
I
can
have a
miss a
school
meeting.
committee meeting on that date. Do you have a?
You're here a lot.
What date?
17th?
Yeah.
Wednesday?
Hang on.
Just preemptively.
Oh,
I have
because it's
no,
MLK
yeah, we
Day.
do. We do have school committee that night.
It's a
Yeah.
holiday week, but it's also a 5-week month.
All right, I'm
so
gonna
we
defer
should go
to
before
Jen will send an
Wednesday.
email.
Jen will send an
Yeah.
email. We will
Might
look
be
out
the
for that
budget,
email.
for the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all wonky with budget and holidays and different things.
Yeah.
So, I will have, as soon as Jen, she's very on top of things like that. So as soon as she's feeling better, I'm sure she'll send that out. And determine if she wants to do that week or to your point, there's an extra week in there somewhere, so maybe do it a different day. Okay.
All right.
Great job. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
All in favor? All in favor?
Everyone's already saying to make that motion.
Here, I'm present and excited to discuss.
Can you get it, Rob?
Yeah, I got it.
Good times.